Easy answer, good morning or good afternoon now. It's noon. Thank you all for being here today. My name is Christian Dunn. This is Jordan Peace. We are with Concert Golf Partners, and we're really excited to meet you all. We've learned a lot about the club and about the community over the last, 5 months, but we're eager to continue to learn and to meet you all and to introduce ourselves today, of course. So we do have a slide that we put together to sort of aid our conversation and our introduction. And so what we'll do, what we're thinking is, we'll kind of introduce ourselves, go through some slides, and then we'll leave ample time at the end of our 2-hour presentation today for questions. And then we are here the rest of the week. We're doing 3 of these today, and then for the next 2 days, we'll just be here at the club. Able to meet with you one-on-one, have coffee, chit-chat, and hopefully get to know you folks a little bit more personally. So without further ado, a little overview on Concert Golf Partners. Our founders, who are still the CEO and COO today, founded Arnold Palmer Golf in the 90s. Back then they had about 30 courses that they oversaw and cared for. Today we have 39 at Concert Golf. We are very boutique by nature. Jordan and I are a large percentage of our entire sort of main office staff, other than club level staff. We do have what we believe are all premier, exclusively private clubs. We don't own daily fee courses. We don't have any resort style courses, all private country clubs. We do have, we understand this industry. It's pretty capital intensive, and so we think it's important to have dedicated capital reserves to continue to invest, not just initially, but over the long term. We've never sold a private club and believe we are a solution forever. Here's a little sample of our clubs around the country. Kind of take a peek. Some of you guys are familiar. Some of the board had an opportunity to visit a few of our clubs, and you may know some as well. But that's just a snapshot around the country. So this is us, and I prepared this slide so I get to make my business partner Jordan blush a little bit. I call him a charismatic leader and fly fisherman, which are both true. But my name again is Christian Dunn. I went to Western Michigan University. I am a very, very proud Michigander. I live in Metro Detroit. I've been there almost all my life. Big Lions fan. I coach soccer. I have 2 children. This is Jack. He's 10 years old. And Maggie, she's 7. My beautiful wife, Brittany. I'll let Jordan kind of introduce himself.
Sure. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. You can see my proud power tee up there. That may not be welcome here, but the southern accent probably is welcome here. Born and raised in Tennessee. You can see my family. This is my wife, Julianne. This is my oldest, Sam, and he's a rule follower. And this is my youngest, Ford, who we just try and keep alive. He's the youngest. And we also have one on the way, we're about to start playing zone defense. But we wanted to introduce ourselves so you could just kind of see the humans standing in front of you that are excited to be here and get to know us a little bit better and a little bit more personally. And maybe give you something to talk about. For example, if you go to Christian and start talking about Michigan, you have at least an hour conversation on your hands. So don't bring it up unless you want to talk about his pride in Michigan. We're not going to go through all these people, but throughout this process and hopefully in the future, you'll meet all these people. Christian just talked about Peter and Susan, our co-founders, who run everything today with a great team. So we've got people, Danny Gwynn has probably built more golf courses than I've ever played in my life. Knows everything there is to know about agronomy. Phil Miller has done billions of dollars worth of renovations in the hospitality industry. And we recruited him because it's a big job to make sure you're doing all these renovations. You have project management and you have people with experience that know how to drive project management. That's Phil for us. He's always running 30 capital projects at a time, if not more. More of the team, again, you'll meet. We don't have to go through these. We just want you to know we have centuries worth of club experience as a resource for so what makes concert golf different? You've probably done some research on concert golf or seen other different styles or management companies in the industry. What makes us different is, one, we are a boutique private club owner and operator. The reason we say boutique, I'm going to move over here because I'm hearing a little bit of feedback. I don't want to have feedback. Is that better? I don't know if you heard it. We know that every single club, if there's anything I've learned being in the club industry, we know that every single club has its own unique history. When was it built? What was the history? Its identity, its culture, its traditions. And so we view clubs as, there are some fundamental things you have to get right. You have to have smiling faces, you have to have good food, you have to have a golf course that's in good shape. But other than that, it's about the overall identity and culture and what you guys do. We'll talk more about that today. But that's what is our kind of our proudest reputation, is making sure the club that you are at, River Hills Country Club, feels like River Hills Country Club. You won't see concert golf partners when you show up, ever. That's just the name of our company. The second thing is we're well capitalized. We know it takes continuous investment and continuous improvement and making sure you have monthly reserve funding to always invest in clubs. This is sort of subjective opinion, but fundamentally I believe that's the thing that helps clubs thrive for the next 5 decades, is making sure you're continuously investing in the club. And then we also have an equal focus on the full club. So we're not a golf company, even though I just mentioned fundamentally the golf course has to be in great shape and the golfers have to be happy with the product on the ground. But we focus on rackets, aquatics, fitness, dining, the total member experience and total hospitality experience. So that's just a little bit more about us. But I'm going to let Christian walk through just a few of our overall clubs so you can see what does that mean? What does concert golf actually have?
Yeah, you saw the map. We're kind of all over the country, but these are just a few that we thought kind of highlight. You may know some of these, but the Club at New Seabury up in Cape Cod, really beautiful property, a large sprawling community, right on the Nantucket Sound, clubhouse there down below, some beautiful golf holes right on the water, pretty unique. Club at Longview, you know well, nearby in Charlotte, absolutely beautiful clubhouse course, Jack Nicklaus course. We were lucky enough to host your board, Club at Longview, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. TPC Yasna Jordan and I have kind of an affinity for this club. It's in Princeton, New Jersey. We had a pretty special project that we were able to see through. You guys all know Gary Player. He spent 2.5 hours sitting with us and talking about the course design that he put together there. So we actually made a little documentary that...
And that was after we asked him one question. Then he spoke for 2 hours. Just took one question.
This is Club at Renaissance in Florida. We'll go a little partial to northern golf versus Florida golf. This is a really fun golf course. It's in Arthur Hills. Beautiful clubhouse, beautiful resort style pool. TPC Monterey at Pasadena. So we'll talk a little bit more about this also. But we applied this TPC designation semi-recently, and it was something we were very proud of, just as far as growth initiatives for the company, different things that we think can help take the club to the next level, and we work with the membership closely. We're at the TPC property, our second, in addition to Yasna Blonde.
I've got to say this while the picture's up. This is a picture from the back tees of hole 14. It's a 214-yard carry on a par 3. I'm not interested, but it is a beautiful golf hole.
No golf ball has ever gone down in that ravine, I'm sure.
Yeah.
This is Golf Club of the Everglades in Naples, Florida. Reese Jones design, really beautiful. A little bit unique to us in that it is really just a pure golf club. There's not additional amenities. There's a grill, locker room, pro shop. But then it's a golf course, no tee times, very small membership. Really beautiful club. Gaillardia, kind of one of our originals. This is one that you might see on our website quite a bit for obvious reasons. Really gorgeous clubhouse. This is actually the men's locker room on the right-hand side. You could host a black tie dinner in there and nobody would skip a beat, I'm sure. And Glen Oaks, probably my favorite golf course. We don't have favorites. We love all our children. But this is a Tom Fazio. It's in West Des Moines. It's really gorgeous. It's really hard, and I'm not a very good golfer. but beautiful property.
So the reason we showed you those is just to help understand. I was talking to Jake earlier, as much we were talking about communities. Like we have quite a few. Glen Oaks, for example, is a gated community. Holiday is a gated community with security things. We were talking a little bit about that. But we also offer our members reciprocal privileges. When you're part of our club, we get a it's a travel benefit. You have the opportunity to play some of our courses. And so you can play at any of our 39 clubs. You'll learn more about that as the process continues. And people really enjoy the ability. It's outside of a 100-mile radius, so it's not local. And someone would have to be traveling. But the key here is we also restrict incoming reciprocal play to less than 1% of all rounds. And we even will tweak the tee times where it's like, there's a 1 o'clock tee time available for reciprocal play today. And so it's really important for us to make sure if you're going to have a reciprocal program, people love it. Look at some of the places you can go play. You have to protect the home club's member experience when you do that, which we've spent the last 3 or 4 years making sure we get really good at that, make sure it's customized. So just a benefit of being a part of the concert golf.
So that's who we are, but why are we standing here kind of in front of you today? What are we talking about? Is there pretty places to visit, nice golf clubs, neat golf courses, but River Hills Country Club. We learned about River Hills, I'm sure several years ago, but really 5 months ago-ish. We kind of came into the board and Dan and started asking questions and studying the area. And really, we just liked everything we saw. It's a charming lakeside community. Reminds me a little bit, Jordan and I both live in kind of the outskirts of the major metro areas we live in. And it reminded us a little bit of our own homes. It's a little bit quieter, a little less congested. Really just a beautiful area. Willard Bird course design. One of the things that jumped out to us immediately was that we've seen a lot of clubs that have come up with capital challenges. They've been presented over the years, renovations, that just managing, keeping the lights on. And we've gone through some different economic times that have presented more or less challenges. And we've seen plenty of boards that really straddle their clubs with that. And it's a big deal because it cripples their ability to continue to invest and continue to elevate, upgrade, and offer all of the sprawling upgrades that kind of the modern club membership demands. And this board uniquely hadn't done that. They've been pretty strategic. They managed to get through a lot of more difficult times successfully. It's hard to do. We see and talk to a lot of clubs, pretty unique. So we thought that was wonderful. We think that the culture here really plays well to our strengths. We like family, communal areas. We have a lot of clubs in HOA gated communities. And those have been,
30.
yep, those have been successful. So we think the values here align nicely with our business model and our future. And we think there's some areas where there's opportunities for enhancement. So we've got pay off club debt, no assessments forever, fund and project manage these major capital renovations. Jordan mentioned Phil Miller. Important part of the process to have somebody overseeing those big projects. Continuous investment, of course, you're going to hear that as a theme because an initial investment is one thing, but what happens in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years? It's important. We think we've got a wonderful group, leadership team and staff that we depend on heavily with just a ton of experience. And again, a long-term solution to make sure that River Hills is healthy for 20 years and 30 years. We contacted River Hills. The board didn't reach out to us and say, hey, we're looking at solutions or alternatives to what we're doing today. We reached out and asked questions. Private clubs are exclusive by nature, they're private. And so the only way that you really get to know folks is to call them and say, how are you doing? How's the golf course? How's the season? What are some of your challenges? What are you looking at for next year? And we learned. We tried to listen and learn as much as possible. We encouraged the board immediately. You need to go to our properties. We feel that our body of work is the most valuable thing that we can offer to you. Go and see, eat the food, play golf, experience hospitality, talk to people, our staff, our leadership teams, other members, hear the good, the bad, everything in between. We know we're not perfect, but we're very proud of our business. the board visited 6 clubs. 5 were the closest geographically. Just drive to them, visit them. And then Sophie, I don't think she's in the room, but happened to be in Houston and visited a club of ours in Houston. So it was just kind of random, which was great. I know they spent a lot of time and energy, not just traveling, but researching this. And then we kind of collaborated on what would this look like? What are you proposing? What are our needs here? And started to gather a plan. And then we sent case studies. We've offered some of our insights about why we believe we're so successful. And then started to lock in sort of core covenants. And we'll talk about those as we go, but the really important things Jordan mentioned, culture and uniquity of clubs, and what was going to be important to bring those. So as we learned, we've got some of the groups up here. Circle of Friends and Omega, 9-holers and 18-holers, the do and don't groups. This is funny to me because I have a membership at home that has nothing to do with Concert Golf Partners, and I play in the blue group on Saturday mornings with a bunch of guys that are all these low single-digit handicappers. Most of them are in their 70s. They play the men's blue tees. They beat me with a smile on their face. They walk and carry their golf clubs. But we go off right after the gold group, followed right up by the RGC group. So I recognize some similarities there. I know the T-sheet organization and how important it is to the culture of the club. We learned about Kenny Husvar, what an amenity he's been to the club, and how his teaching facility or fitting facility came to be on the driving range, an important part to a lot of the members here. Some of the long-term commitments, so the putting greens, as we learned more, we've done the greens, right? You guys have, rather, and they're great today. They look outstanding. We had the opportunity to bring out a couple of our agronomists, and they said, boy, the golf course is in really good shape. Commended Aaron's work, his team. The board's been very clear and wonderful. But we know that, is it 5 years, is it 10 years? We know that there's another project down the road, so something that we've kept a tight eye on. We learned about bourbon dinners, wine dinners at the club, and how they sell out in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and not everybody can attend. So all of these just considerations for where are the opportunities, how can we contribute in a positive way. Sounds like kitchen expansion is a big one. Our team kind of looked into the kitchen and said, boy, Matthew could use some assistance here, some of our resources, some of the things that we've done or implemented in other clubs that was really successful, were really successful. We learned about the pickleball courts and how John Bohan has to replay points on the pickleball court because there's dead spots. And then you guys have reciprocal, just local reciprocal benefits with some of the other clubs. Learned about lifetime memberships, an important part of the strategy that's been used to not straddle the club with debt. Members that were able to contribute, help the club through some tougher times. Charity events, which we love. We have a lot that we've continued and maintained at other clubs. So, we've mentioned a few times here, we think of ourselves as a capital and operating partner. So what's important about that? Well, no assessments ever. We're confident that we can operate the club where those just go away. They don't have to be a consideration now or in the future. We are going to commit to $5 million plus of capital projects. These projects, the scope of the work is all over the place. As you know, you get into projects and open walls and things change. And costs soar. But we've collaborated with the board and come up with or identified the most critical projects. And while we think, and part of what we love about River Hills is that it is a thriving club, but we see there's obvious areas for opportunity. When we tied into the Jeff Lawrence design and learned about some of what he was recommending, we said, yeah, we've seen plenty of clubs kind of forego those big infrastructure needs that become critical over time. And we agreed with a lot of his recommendations on the golf course, and we think that there's similarities across the club in other areas. We think that the racket facilities could be upgraded. Let's stop replaying those points, and let's just have a new surface. So extrapolate that to the pool, clubhouse, fitness, locker rooms, all these areas that we're ready to tackle. Streamlined governance actually ends up being a big one. I mentioned earlier, your board has done a lot of work. I talk to Dan most days. I've learned his dog walking schedule, and so I bother him frequently. Questions, how you doing, Dan? How are things going? But we talk a lot about streamlined governance, meaning that volunteer boards at private clubs can be challenging. You have folks that are rolling on that are successful in their own industries and their own careers, but they're taking on something that they maybe don't have a lot of experience with, and they're learning. And they do a good job because they care and they don't designate their time. And then 2 years later, or 3 years later, whatever the set is, they roll off and someone new comes on board. And so it evolves that way. And while everyone has the best interest in mind, it's difficult. It's a unique set of challenges. There are not a lot of companies that would operate that way, with volunteer, sort of part-time board members that are governing the club. One of the examples I like to point out is this gentleman over to the right. I don't know if you can see him, it's a small picture. This is Don Smith. And Don's actually a recent addition to our organization, but I think he's an important one because he's exemplary of our pursuit to continue to attract and retain really talented staff and leadership that can guide our clubs, our organization. So Don has a terrific resume. He was at Riviera Country Club in LA, he was at Snowmass Club in Aspen, and most recently he spent 5 years at Myers Park right here in Charlotte, while there oversaw a $30 million renovation. So great experience at wonderful clubs, golf course, ops, hospitality, but also construction management, project management. We know that some of these projects can lead to big assessments, and assessments, unfortunately, at least historically, lead to member attrition. And there's sort of a vicious cycle that can be created. It's a downward spiral that you increase dues or you assess to fund some of these projects. And some folks, is it 5%, is it 10%, is it 20%, don't sign up for it. It's not part of their plan, not what they joined the club for. And they find themselves cutting checks and increasing, and they go on and done. Well, what happens when fewer members are contributing? You raise the dues more, you assess more, or establish your capital. And you can see how it becomes this continuous cycle. So what we'd be proposing is no assessments, no capital fees, you're just going to pay regular dues, Concert Golf forever. Future dues increases, and this is something that your board really pressed us on. They said, hey, this sounds a little bit too good to be true. Why would you be able to accomplish something that we've not been able to? Why would you be able to not assess and yet fund all these big projects? You're just going to increase dues over time, right? So no, we don't think we have to. And we'll show you why. We've got some pretty specific slides to get into that. But we don't think we have to. And if we do, because we know, kind of my favorite example is my wife, my little girl Maggie. I'll show you a picture of her. She's 7. Maggie is a carnivore. Maggie eats steak at every meal she can. She, on Saturday mornings when I wake up, I like to make an omelet for my kids and give my wife a little time to sleep in. I'll go, Maggie, what are you hungry for? She'll go, shrimp. 7. So Maggie loves chicken wings, and chicken wings used to cost me $6. 6 wings, we'd go out to eat. Now they're $15. So we know that there's some of those inflationary kind of items, and we know that things increase the cost of things over time. But we can commit to increasing dues only with a combination of CPI or local market clubs. So there's only really a couple of clubs, and we don't think any of them are direct competition, because we think River Hills is great. But we're going to put a covenant in place that protects your dues, your regular dues, so no capital fees, no assessments, and your regular dues are always going to be very important. And then we think that we're really good at attracting and retaining future staff, which is helpful, like Don Smith.
So, Christian touched on a couple things, but let's go through, okay, what is the proposal? What is Concert Golf proposing at River Hills Country Club? So let's dig in a little bit and make sure, and if you have questions, remember them because we can go through it. And the first is, we're gonna come in, and we've committed to, and we've spent a lot of time on this with your board, we've committed to a list of capital projects we estimate will cost more than $5 million. And your board's been very specific about the language and what we're committing to make sure that you get exactly what we're committing to. And that the list is on the right. Bunkers. We're going to renovate the bunkers, put new billy bunkers in. A lot of the bunkers are steep, so address the shading and steepness of the bunkers. New drainage, new same. Cart paths, which usually happens after the bunkers because you tear up the cart paths all the way to the bunkers. But cart paths. There's a few holes that need complete replacement. There's a few places that need repaving. There's roots. We've been specific about that. They've even gone as far as getting quotes to do that project. Beautification. Jeff Lawrence came in here, talked to probably a lot of you, was very specific about his designs and what he thought. Our gardening team looked at it and thought Jeff was very thoughtful, and his professional opinion was right almost across the board. Outside of some subjectivity of like, well, do you put drainage here, do you put drainage there? The overall plan was good. So beautification, just as outlined. Tee boxes, adding a specific number of square footage along with, I think the number is 11 additional forward tees, plus some that merge. So adding some forward tees to make sure that people who want the course to be a little shorter have an opportunity to have tees.
John Schaefer corrected me on that.
Okay, yeah.
I had 13
Yeah.
forward tees. Yeah.
There was a few that merged.
Frank and John met with us a couple hours a few times.
Yeah, ultimately what we agreed to there was we said, well, what's the yardage have to be? And they're like 4,100 yards. We're like, we'll look at the forward tees, 4,100 yards. I don't know. So following the plan to make sure that you get your tee boxes, which our team just finished a project doing exactly that, and it was off of the everybody. So they have very recent experience making sure that project goes well. That was a little more complicated because you had to work with Reese Jones, who's a little more complicated than Jeff Lawrence, I'd say. And then drainage, adding drainage to very specific holes, pulling up the old steel pipes, replacing it with HDPE. So there's been a lot of work done, and we effectively have said, okay, we're going to go do that work. That's the work we do. We do it all over the country. I mentioned Danny Wynn. So we're going to do that. Rackets, very specific again. Rackets go, down the list. We do the pickleball court surfaces, fencing, beautification, clay court irrigation. So we have a specific list, and this is a summary, but the board's been very detailed in exactly what's being represented to, which you'll have an opportunity to see when the time's appropriate. Refresh the pool area, cabanas, beautification, we pull furniture to make sure that there's added value down at the pool area. And then the house, got a few things. One, kitchen. Christian mentioned the kitchen. Parking lots, there's surfacing the parking lots, adding some golf cart parking. Clubhouse event space, so expanding this clubhouse event space to be able to fit more people. Maybe we would have 2 town halls instead of 3 if there was more space. And then the most important thing is indoor, outdoor, all-season dining. We want to take advantage of the view of the lake and figure out a way to have a great member space that's all-season indoor, outdoor dining. And we've been very specific that these are the projects we're going to do on these timelines. You'll see some of them are phased. We're going to come in the first year, you'll make sure you see it. Some of them take a little longer to plan, so they may start down the road. We don't want to turn the place into a construction zone. Yeah, go ahead, there's a question. Oh, okay, sorry about that, thank you. So that's the overview. We can get to questions, but we've been very specific. We're going to come in, we're going to fund these projects within Project Nation. We're going to. Payment of debt, club has about 1.9 million of debt, which I'll talk more about, I think, on the next slide. At closing, pay it off. No more debt, no more interest payments. It's very important to the health of the club and the balance sheet. We understand that there's some subset of members that have been here a long time. They have an equity member repurchase. We've agreed to assume that, which means when they resign, we would pay that to the member. I think there's some that we said we probably do with the state of South Carolina under its achievement laws. So that's another piece of debt that we're taking on to make sure we take care of legally. And that doesn't affect every member, but we know there's a subset of you that are in that is something that's important. Okay, that sounds nice. You're going to come in and you're going to invest a lot of money in the club. What's next? Well, how do we protect you? This is where we spend a lot of time with the board. How do you make sure you're getting the experience that you want? First of all, we've covenanted to keeping this club a private club. We only have private clubs. That's what we're going to commit to. We've also added to this. We've recently talked that we've committed to Dan to make sure that the property becomes deed restricted. Probably in the state of South Carolina, it's for open space. It cannot be developed. We're not developers. Development's a bad word for us. We hate anything about development. And so there's a deed restriction. No matter what, if Concert Golf fails to be a company in 15 years, which wouldn't happen, the property is deed restricted. It doesn't matter. It cannot be developed. Right? Capital projects, again, we're agreeing to a specific list of detailed capital projects. we've estimated it'll cost $5 million. Most of the time it ends up costing more than that because you open up walls. So that's why we're going to a list of projects that are very detailed, because frankly it'll end up costing more, and we don't want to say, well, we spent $5 million. We have to complete the projects, which is really important. And 36 months, usually we do that in 24 months, but again, some of this has to be phased because you don't want the entire place to be a construction zone. So your board was thoughtful about that, saying, we can phase these and get the priorities done first. Dues rates, Christian just mentioned it, but dues are frozen for the first year. You won't pay more. You're not going to get an assessment, and then there's limitations thereafter on what the increases can be. Memberships, existing lifetime and 10-year memberships will be honored. So if you were one of the people that stepped up and said, hey, I'm gonna pay for a lifetime membership, or I'm gonna pay for a 10-year membership, Dan made it incredibly clear that was critical to make sure that we honored those. And we said absolutely. Capital reserve. So what happens? Hey, when the greens need to be redone in 5, 7, 10 years, what happens? Well, we have a capital reserve where we're saying, hey, 3 to 4% minimum will go back into the club every year. We average a lot more than that. I think it's almost 8% in our clubs after we invest in these initial projects. And your board got to see actually some of the work we've done that had nothing to do with the covenant, a club we owned for a long time. Christian will run through some of them later. But as I mentioned, it's fundamental for us that we continue to invest back into our clubs. So we have a contractual minimum. Reciprocal privileges I talked about earlier. It's a great benefit for people who like to travel and play golf, as long as you protect the home club, and we have a good way of doing both. So we've got a contractual covenant to make sure that the reciprocal rounds are less than 1% of total round. Right of first discussion. So we've never sold a private club. We have no intentions to. We view ourselves as a very long-term, perpetual owner of clubs, and our mission is to be the best hospitality business in the club industry. If, however, for some reason there was ever a decision to sell the club to somebody else, the members have the right to know first and figure out what's best for that community. I don't expect that to come up, and again, there's a deed restriction, which is further, but that was really important to the board as well to make sure, what's going to happen? Well, you would know first, even though that's not been relevant in our history. Employees, we're going to come in and hire the staff. This is an important point we probably haven't spent enough time talking about, but even though we have a support team, our corporate team, which you saw on the screen basically, you're looking at a large percentage of, they really support. We view the clubs as autonomous, right, with the resource of experience behind it. It doesn't mean you won't see our leadership team here, but for example, Aaron, the superintendent, is going to have a resource like Danny, who actually lives in North Carolina. Hey, I got a question. What's your, and Danny has experience, and so we will hire the team here. And then we're responsible for making sure if someone leaves and you have an open position, we have to go do that work as opposed to the board. And we think that's important. Obviously, we have a lot of experience to do that. And we also have a lot of employees in our company who are up and coming, and they're an assistant general manager of a club, and they can't wait for their next opportunity. So we have a lot of just staff training grounds, and more importantly, the staff here now has opportunities for us to grow. And Joseph, who I think some of you guys met, started at McGregor Downs as the clubhouse manager. And he's now senior vice president of our entire company, overseeing a massive amount. So he was able to work his way up in our company and has had a great career. When we recapitalized McGregor Downs, he was the clubhouse manager and then worked his way to GM. So we think for the staff, and we're going to meet with the staff tomorrow, it's a really great opportunity. And we're going to hire. The staff you see today, day one, that staff's going to be the same. And if there's any changes, it's hopefully just to make sure that it's for the member experience, right? Advisory board, it's critical. If you're a hospitality company, you have to have feedback. So we immediately set up an advisory board that meets with the general manager and sometimes our more senior leadership so we can get feedback. We do surveys as well, as you imagine, to make sure we really understand the pulse, because even sometimes the advisory board doesn't have the full pulse. But we talk to the advisory board and make sure, is it monthly or quarterly, the advisory board can decide. We're going to meet with the GM, tell them what we're thinking, tell them how's the food, how's the experience, and make sure that we have that feedback so that we can continue to make sure members are happy. Committed to continue the Veterans Charity event. I understand it's really important. We mentioned to you that the culture and the Vince and Christian mentioned all the different golf groups. That's critical. Those don't change. And veterans charity events, one would say, yeah, absolutely, continue to do that. It's important to the club. And then USGA Greens. We understand very clearly that there's not a desire for the club to close the greens down right now. And our team said, look, we can agree to elevate the greens to the USGA standard. What timeline? Not sure. Need to get in there. But we will make sure they have greens as a playing surface. If you travel around to our clubs, you'll understand that another fundamental thing is you got to have good greens in golf courses. So we'll make sure that the greens are good. So why now? I think the board's been clear that there are some infrastructure needs at this club that are going to cost a lot of money. The golf course needs things immediately. The rackets need things immediately. And the clubhouse, it's time for some additional things in the clubhouse and renovations, indoor outdoor dining, to make sure that the members have a great member experience here. So instead of being assessed, Christian talked about this. You assess members, you lose some that aren't interested in the assessment or it doesn't pass, you raise dues or assess again, and it's that continual cycle. And so to prevent member attrition, our proposal is lock in the success that you have right now. We'll invest in the club and we'll protect you in this way, and it's a great partnership. We have great staff retention. We're going to manage the projects because we have Phil Miller and his team that are going to manage the projects with the assistance from some of the local staff. Again, no club debt, and so the club balance sheet is paid off, and there's more cash flow, which is important for that. And then most importantly is the acceleration of capital projects. Over time, depending on how the assessment goes and what the club will plan to do, it may take us 7 to 10 years to start chipping away at all these things. And we're saying, why not accelerate it and do it all now, right, over a good time period. We think that's very important to make sure you take care of these infrastructure needs so that you don't fall into that cycle of assessing members, losing members, raising dues.
So just a few instances, and you guys are obviously interested in River Hills, but I want you to see a few just examples in the Concert family currently where we did this. We had the kind of same scenario. We had clubs with critical infrastructure needs, surmounting debt. And so Blue Hill is a good example. I've got a couple up here, and I'll breeze through them pretty quickly so we don't bore you guys to death. But Blue Hill Country Club, just outside Boston. Beautiful suburb, very affluent, great golf course, hosted the 1956 PGA Championship. It's a long time ago, but it's a major. I don't think it's good today, it's not long enough. But it's
only 6,700 yards.
So. Only. But great golf course in a thriving area, and they made some decisions that your board actually has some pitfalls that they've avoided, and they ended up in not a great situation, and they lost members as a result, and they just fell into that cycle. It's a perfect example. And so we've been able to, since, clear away all the debt, renovate some of the areas of the clubhouse and amenities that needed it, which enabled us to attract membership. Blue Hill was interesting because they had outpriced their dues in their market significantly. So we had to reduce their dues dramatically to attract new members and solidify the future of the club. And today it is a thriving, wonderful place. We're actually on almost round 2 of renovations at Blue Hill, all the things that we did initially. It's now been 6, 8, 10 years, and we're doing a lot of them. McGregor Downs, your board spent some time there. Really wonderful club, great golf course. We made some adjustments on the golf course that became the largest single year jump in course ratings. I'm one that believes that course ratings are pretty subjective. It's just whether you enjoy it and how you played that day, if it was sunny or not. But it jumped from somewhere in the 60s down into the teens for a rate on course ranking. So pretty neat and wonderful, thriving club today. Their board president there, Dan Coretta, I spoke to on the phone this week. Still a member, still very happy and grateful for Concert Golf. Mutton Town is a beautiful Georgian clubhouse. It's a 70,000 square foot clubhouse. comes with a unique set of challenges because anything that you do, you need to do about 10 times to cover all the ground. But pretty neat place. Again, beautiful area on the North Shore, Long Island. There's some folks I know in the room that know this area well and played for us actually. But similar story where the membership just got into some struggles with standard governance. It's really just raising funds to address some of their infrastructure and their needs, and fell into kind of that vicious cycle. So one of the big things we did was renovate around the pool area. This was traditionally a dining and golf club, and today it's flourishing. It's got a really healthy swim team, pool area, a lot more going on socially, and just beautiful, healthy, happy club.
And right now we're building a brand new practice facility, short game facility with this club, which again is outside of covenants, but just the club needed it, so we're spending money to turn an area that was nothing into a really good short game area.
This is Pasadena out in Monterey. We mentioned earlier that this went from the club at Pasadena to TPC Monterey at Pasadena. But Nicholas Signature, that's that par 3 over the ravine that Jordan pointed out earlier. Really, really beautiful golf course. And this one's a little bit unique. It was not fully member-owned, but rather a group, a subset of the membership had bought it. And they had owned and operated it themselves, about a dozen of them, because they had some sort of ownership group that was not really holding up their end of the bargain. The course conditions started to decline, the food started to decline, the membership started to decline. And so they took it upon themselves. They had the money, they thought they had the resources, they jumped in, and after a couple of years they realized that it wasn't going as well as they had hoped. It was a little better, and their hearts were in the right place. They hired a third-party management company to come in and help them out. Again, did some nice things, straightened out some of the accounting, some of the HR, some of the clerical stuff, and took another kind of step forward, but ultimately didn't really put the club on the platform it needed to be. And we had been talking to them through most of that, and we're kind of aware of their storyline. And finally one day they called and said, we need some help. What would it look like? How would we go through it? Talk us through kind of the concert vision or strategy. And after sitting down and spending a lot of time with their board, we came up with a long-term solution. So we're about 2.5, 3 years later, and their managing partner calls us weekly. Thank you. This place is revitalized. The membership is excited. The food is terrific. They really had some struggles getting out of a small kitchen and putting out great food. So wonderful club, and we're very happy to have it in the concert family.
I must admit that he happens to be a Tennessee fan, so there's a conflict of interest there. Chris is a Tennessee. All right, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, operating plan. Again, we're very proud of our business, of our clubs. We like to show them to you as sort of examples of what we do and how we do it. But what's the nitty gritty? What makes it work? What's different between what we would do and what your board has done or what the membership of River Hills has done? Well, a few things, and this is just kind of the overhead, but let's dig right into it.
So, let me go back for a second. So, Christian kind of mentioned, one, this all sounds too good to be true. You're going to invest the money, you're not going to assess me, you have all these covenants. How does this work for you guys? So, especially for financial people, we'll kind of go for why does this make sense for Concert Golf? First of all, this is our only business. So there is some stuff that we bet on ourselves. We're going to build some great indoor-outdoor dining space. And we want people to stay and use it. You get off the 18th hole, you can't wait to go sit and have a drink with your friends, settle up. We want to increase engagement. Wine dinners. We want to increase the capacity with the new space of the wine dinner or the bourbon dinner and make sure people have the ability to go. Make sure people are just engaged and playing in the member tournaments. We'll probably add some programming. You guys have good programming you love, that won't change. What about some new things that people might be interested in that you don't have? And we get to share those best practices. And so, for some of you, you're thinking like me, well, wait a minute, financially, how does this work? A big piece of that for us is procurement. We have 39 clubs. We have things we can do that are non-member facing that you guys don't have the ability to do, and that's critical for our success. The first is golf carts. I do think we have the best golf cart contract. So as we renew those contracts, we typically save 31% on an annual basis on golf carts. Food costs. One of the contracts we have in the food industry to buy a lot of your standard stuff. A lot of our chefs still buy local stuff for produce and meat, but the bulk, the mayonnaise, the sauces, the plates, the napkins. We signed a contract with Cisco actually to buy a lot of that stuff right after they had just lost Darden as a customer, and somehow we got one of the best long-term contracts on the planet. So most people pay 21% to somebody like Cisco over cost. We pay 5.5%, so we save money there. We have a Toro relationship, although John Deere is trying to get our business, so we have some notes. So when we lease new equipment, we lease Toro equipment, and we're very, insurance and employee benefits, we save thousands on insurance just simply because of our size. And we do have the ability too, because of our size, to have a little higher deductible. And so if we have an issue, we can save money on annual ongoing insurance. Things like bunker sand, fertilizer, chemicals. Again, we have a Site One relationship that is very, very strong because of the amount that we're able to buy from them on an annual basis. And so our purchasing power provides us with significant cash flow that, again, is non-lender fixed. You're going to sit in the same cart that you drive, or you're going to have an upgraded cart and a new lease, and it's going to be 31% less. So I calculated at a club like River Hills, and this is fairly accurate. They'll audit me, but it's fairly accurate. It's $300,000 a year in annual savings that we'll be able to take advantage of over time. So if you think about it, again, you're a numbers person. Well, how does this work? Well, we're going to bet on ourselves to lock in the cash flow that you guys have. We're not going to assess members. We're not going to lose members. Your dues are going to remain the same. You're all going to stay and be happy members. So lock in the success that's happening now. Pay off the debt, another $250,000. Take advantage of these synergies. And then as we invest in the club, we're hopeful that, for example, when we have new space, there's some people in the community where they want to be social members now, and previously they didn't. We got new space, they love to sit out and enjoy the view of some dining space, and so we're betting on ourselves. So you can see a few $100,000 plus $250,000 plus $200,000 plus betting on ourselves a little bit. It makes sense for us to make this investment. So I want to just kind of outline the numbers because I think it's important. If I was sitting in your chair, I'd go, wait, how does this work? This is how it works.
So one of the things that we think is important, we talked about the advisory committee. So this says at the top, experience project management, but right underneath it, we solicit member input. So we want to get your feedback. And one of the things that your board's been incredible with is communicating to us very specifically what their expectations are. Jeff Lawrence laid out a really brilliant plan on the golf course, but what happens down on the tennis courts? What happens by the pool? What happens with the clubhouse? So we're going to continue, not just with this initial project, because it will take 24 or 36 months to complete all the projects, but we want to get input from the membership. We want to learn more. We've learned a little bit, I think maybe even a lot, but not all of it. We haven't been here. So we need to see how you use the club, what the habits are, your interaction with the staff, what the pathways through. We think a lot about routing, what's convenient from the time you get out of your car to drive on property to the time there's a sandwich on your plate or you're on the first tee, and how to improve those areas. This is reinvestment and improvement, but we thought it was important. Okay, you've done some renovations, you have a construction manager. These are, I think there's two important things here. These are recent examples of capital projects, so you can kind of see the work that we do, but all of these also took place after our initial, we use the term recapitalization by paying off debt and funding projects. So there's an initial agreement, contractual agreement. In this case, it's an estimated $5 million worth of projects plus $2 million. You guys get the picture. These are projects that took place after all of that. This is just the front lobby at White Manor needed to be updated. So there's the left on the left side, and it was fine. It was nice, but the right looks better, more modern. Still tying into their logo. This is a little outdoor area. We did kind of the same thing on the backside of Denver. This was a small project that we just thought was nice. Enjoy the space.
Before that was just a grass area, and so we needed to build something there because it just needed something for members to sit down and enjoy when the weather was nice. different than, this is more modest than what our expectation this year, but it's just a project that we're focusing on.
A couple, that's the outside of one of our clubhouses in Florida that has kind of a tidal thing that comes in, so there's that wall to protect us from the water, but then a patio terrace area. The beachside party tent is where weddings take place at one of our clubs on the beach, which is pretty fun, interesting, beautiful area to have a wedding. Here's a TrackMan or simulator lounge anyways. During the pandemic, when we were finally able to get our hands on one and nobody could go or do anything, we threw up quickly on the left side, go use the simulator lounge, get out of your house, do something. Well, quickly we realized we need to improve this. So on the right hand side, you see the finished product. This is top tracer on the range, and then our new greens. So we talked about a greens project when it takes place. We just did all 18, and that's actually our oldest club. That was our original club, Heathrow, in Lake Mary, Florida, just a little bit north of Orlando. We're the greens, it was time, they needed it, we redid them all. We thought they were wonderful immediately. We learned that over the first season they were pretty firm, so hitting into an island of green like that became a little bit challenging.
Yeah, new greens are very firm until you aerate them about 3 times. Because the members like, oh great, we're getting new greens, and then they were like, I hate that island hole, I can't keep the ball in the green.
Not everybody hits the ball as high up in the air as this guy does.
Just not straight.
Yeah. This was a pool project out in St. Louis. I thought maybe it would resonate with you guys because they've got kind of a similar setup. They've got the resort style side, and then they have a thriving swim team. And so we redid everything, put in a splash pad, some slides for the kids, some grills, terraces, bars, all at the same club.
So we're about to open it up for Q&A, and we'll start with a couple things that Dan wanted us to specifically request. But we hope we gave you a little bit of clarity on who is Concert Golf and what are they proposing for River Hills, and how do we make sure that this makes sense. Next up, we have these today. We're spending a lot of time doing this with your fellow members, answering Q&A. We will be here tomorrow and Thursday to just stop by pretty much all day. And if you have questions maybe you don't want to ask now, we'll be able to sit down and you can ask us more specific questions, or you can ask them now. We just want you to know we're available to help learn more, because we understand that this is a big, impactful decision. We can do follow-up video conferences. Some of this we'll figure out what's needed to understand how to make sure people understand what's going on. We'll share some materials, so at some point later this week, Dan can send out a link, or somebody can send out a link where we have some of these materials and some additional things for you to review. We'll probably continually update or frequently asked questions, where if we're getting the same question, we have a document where you can see who's asking questions and what do they exactly. We're working on kind of legally, right? It's important that we're saying all these things, but how do you back that up? We'll have a purchase agreement, and we'll have all the documentation. Your lawyers will represent you in making sure that you're getting what we're saying up here. And then eventually, and I don't think there's a specific timeline yet, there will be a vote, right, on the ability to recapitalize through Concert Golf, address capital needs without an assessment. And some of that's kind of up in the air, up to Dan on when that happens. But that's ultimately what the next steps are. Christian, I'll kind of let you finish this before we head into Q&A. Just to reiterate that we've done this before.
Yeah. And ultimately, and this is another point that your board's been very clear on, they looked into solutions. They looked into opportunities. They wanted to figure out what was available to them and to the membership at River Hills to lock in a bright future, to take advantage of this past good year. It's been fantastic, and avoid some of the previous years that were really challenging. What can we do? We've got some of these opportunities ahead of us. And ultimately, it does come down to a vote. The board is going to have kind of their separate vote to see how they're thinking, what they believe should take place. And the membership is going to do the same. So this is our track record of recapitalizations with other member-owned clubs. And it's been very successful. These were clubs where they had needs just like River Hills. They had debt. They had their own set of facts. Some are similar, some are a little bit unique. But ultimately,
they're all unique.
Yeah. But this was it. You can see, very proud, 1923. Some old clubs, some newer ones, 1994. But it's worked out very well, and we've been as transparent as possible and met with the membership and learned about their needs and wants. And this is how those have gone.
So we have a bunch of frequently asked questions, but we probably will we'll probably just immediately open it up. We have a couple things we want to address, and then we'll just immediately open it up, and some of them will be the same. So we put together a bunch of questions that your board has asked us, and we can publish these later. But I think after maybe we answer the first two, we'll just open it up and you guys can ask the questions that are on your mind.
I'll ask you the first one, Jordan. Are you a private equity company?
Yeah. I know this has been a question that's been circulating to understand really what's happening. We've been very clear and transparent with Dan from the beginning. When our company was founded, Peter Nandula bought Heathrow, recapitalized it, I guess, in Lake Mary, Florida. It's the one we showed the top tracer range and the new crews on. At that time, he was a shareholder, he was an investor, he also had friends and family who was an investor, and I think at the time even Freestone Capital. So from the beginning, he's trying to get thoughtful about investors that have come in and helped us continue to grow and invest in the clubs and the member experience and the amenities. Since then, we've gotten bigger, and over time, those investors have continuously changed. Some investors have come in, some investors have come out, and we've gotten big enough to where a few times now we've taken on institutional investors, some private equity investors, which can be unclear depending on what's in the room. So we do have private equity investors. What's important to know is Concert Golf is not a private equity fund where we're coming in and investing and flipping. Concert Golf is an operationally independent hospitality firm with the leadership team that we've told you that has investors to help us continue to grow and stand in front of you guys and continue to invest. And I assume that will continue to be the case over time. Those investors typically have some, depending on who they are, they have some sort of timeline on their investment. And our investors will change as they have. Peter and Susan and even Christian and Jordan are individual investors, right? Even though I'm a very minority individual investor. But we're a hospitality company. We have operational independence. We do have a board because we have investors. And so we're not a private equity fund. We do have institutional investors as a part of our overall investments that we continue to grow. And we can clarify any of that, but I know that's been a question that's been raised, so we just wanted to kind of lay out exactly what we have. And we've been transparent with Dan about that from the beginning to understand how we've grown. It's kind of always been a part of our history.
I'll add to that just a little bit that we feel really grateful to have our investors. It's allowed us to scale. It's allowed our business to thrive. We wouldn't have been able to scale our organization and have the buying power and the economies of scale that we do today. And they've been really collaborative, I would say, but kind of just quiet. They understand our business, they trust us, and they've looked to us to guide the business, to grow the business. When we look at clubs that we'd love to partner with, like River Hills, Jordan Peace is ultimately the decision maker every time. And we send updates to some folks because we think it's important with them to be transparent and to clarify what we're doing and how we're going about our business and make sure, frankly, that we're not making a terrible decision. But this is it. So we think that it's really a wonderful structure. It's been successful for us. It'll continue this way, I think, for a long time. But we take great pride in our operational independence.
All right, Christian, what's going on with the club at Longview? Some of you know Longview, and I mentioned, hey, there's litigation going on at Longview. You want to talk a little bit about that? Because it's something that, frankly, it disappoints Christian. Nobody likes litigation, so we talk about it.
Yeah, we're a big company, and sometimes big companies stumble on stuff. Longview, we would much rather focus our efforts and energy on operating our clubs and trying to do right by our membership. Longview had, at the time, the developer, Mel Graham, who built all the homes and infrastructure and golf course. But when he sold it, there was a group of members that wanted to buy it then. And they still would like to own it today. And so we've had a tough time pleasing a pretty specific small group that relates to the HOA. They'd like to control the guard gate, they'd like to control the clubhouse, they'd like to control their community. Frankly, I don't really blame them. It's personal, it's a really beautiful upscale community. But they've not really been receptive to anything that we've done. And so there's been some headaches along the way, and there's been some noise that we've dealt with. And so currently, the litigation surrounds them wanting to rescind the sale from the developer Mel Graham to Concert Golf Gardens. That's what their current effort is. And we've gotten updates along the way and feel comfortable with our position. But really that's Longview. They don't like any traffic coming in and out of the gates. They don't love that some of their members are from outside the gates, which we don't really see a problem with. There was never any covenants, contractual membership bylaws that required all the members to be from within the gates. So it's just a philosophical opposition.
I guess to give you some more data there, we believe, and Don Smith is there all the time, the actual membership experience there is really positive. It's being a little tainted by a small group of 4 members that want to own the club and haven't been receptive to it. We've heard feedback and fixed things immediately that they didn't like, and it didn't matter. And the judge even a couple of weeks ago or a week ago was kind of lambasting them for wasting his time. So we don't expect it, but we have to protect the fact that we legally own the club and we operate it. We haven't breached anything, and it feels like okay. So again, it's a little disappointing, but I know that's going around. It's a local club. We should hear the truth, and so we wanted to bring it up, immediately in front of everybody. So.
And I hope it's impactful or powerful with you that the club is great. They still have no tee times. It's a beautiful golf course. And your board was able to spend some time with us there and eat the food and experience our staff. Some of them were able to stay and play golf. The place is great, and we're really proud of it. So even though it is, a headache for us a little bit, Longview is fantastic from my perspective.
So I think it's a good time to just open it up to questions.
You mentioned that Concert Golf has never sold any courses. What about the predecessor company, Arnold Golf, or Arnold Palmer Golf? What happened to that?
It effectively still exists. Peter and Susan sold, I think it's Century Golf now, that has the Arnold Palmer brand, most of those courses. That was a little bit different company because they had a little bit of management, they did own and operate some clubs, they leased some clubs. Eventually Century Golf took it over and still operates most of those clubs today. So most of that company still exists. Peter and Susan just got out after 15.
So they sold that to Century.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I don't know, it was a long time ago in the 90s, so I don't know the exact history, but that's fundamentally.
Another question. You had the schedule of the improvements that were to be made here, which many of them do need to be made. We all agree. There was one club that you have, Philmont, that filed a lawsuit against you for fraud, and basically said that you didn't fulfill your doing the capital improvements that had been promised. And that then gotten thrown out due to the statute of limitations or to the time of fraud. In South Carolina, it's a 3-year statute of limitations on fraud. So some of these things go out 3 years on this, and if they're not done, then I'm just trying to understand how the club can protect itself and the members in potentially doing this deal, relying on the fact that you're going to make these capital improvements, and then you don't, and then now we're in the same spot that Philmont.
It's a smart question.
Let me clarify a few things that you said. So the lawsuit, you were right about part of it. The lawsuit for Philmont was from the old developer that was trying to develop the land. This is the reason I said we're not developers. We stepped into a board who was selling and developing land. They couldn't get it done. There was 8 PSA extensions between the board and this former developer where they met each other in prison. That developer sued us saying we stole the plans and that we were going to take advantage of it. And then through that, obviously, everybody was deposed. So it wasn't the members suing us, but what you're referring to is in there were some depositions where they were talking about the projects that we've done. Because when we sold the land, we were supposed to invest more money in the club. At the end of the day, it was around $7 million or $9 million total. We actually invested almost $11 million during that time, which is part of the reason that it was divested. As a matter of fact, one of the pictures they complained about, like, oh, they didn't do great renovations there. Like there's a statement in there that says, oh, I didn't think the quality was done. That's actually Philmont. That's some of the renovations that we had done there, where you can see the bar where they were saying it wasn't done well. So there's that. The second part of your question was related to how do we make sure you do this, I think. And first is what I would say is your board has been to a lot of our clubs where they've seen that we are doing what we say we're going to do. We're investing. We have no incentive to not come in and do exactly what we said we're going to do, because I need Dan in the future to be a champion of concert golf. We're trying to build a long-term hospitality company where we need champions. Legally, from a legal perspective, the River Hills Country Club Inc. entity will stay open, and Keith and I have talked about how mechanically this will happen, which we haven't finalized. But that old code will hold us accountable. Leave it open for 3 years and make sure if we're not doing it, or you can tell in 2.5 years, they haven't even started on that outdoor dining, you're going to have the ability to make sure we're held liable for that. But fundamentally, at the end of the day, it's why the board's gone. We have no incentive to do that. We'll not do that. We have the capital to do this right now, and that's what we're going to do. I hope that clarifies. Does it? At least somewhat? Okay. I think that's all.
Can we get a microphone to the person who was asking the question?
Sure.
Yeah, clear.
You and I can share one. Yeah, I think
As well.
the question earlier, just so you heard the answer. The question was about an old lawsuit we had from a developer, as I just mentioned, at Philmont. And there was a lot of complexity to it. It was dismissed, meaning he said Concert Golf is not responsible for this. But so I'm trying to clarify that. That was what the question was about.
I'm gonna move around and just pass the microphone so we can hear the questions.
Yeah, so to follow up on the Philmont question, they previously had 36 holes, and in the lawsuit, they said that you agreed to maybe develop 9, and then you developed 18 golf course holes.
Yeah.
So
that was one that's interesting as well. When you read A Point in Time, even as they were iterating through the process, once the recap happened, the membership, including the board, they only cared about the North Course. And so even if you read our purchase agreement at the time, our purchase agreement said 9 holes or the South Course, as long as, they saw it, their attorneys saw it. And so it wasn't a commitment that was ever made. I know what you're talking about, but at the end of the day, it was agreed upon by the board that the North Course had to be maintained, and we ended up, for the betterment of the club, actually developing the entirety of the 18 holes.
and who are your current investors?
We've got a lot. Clear Lake Capital is a large investor in us. They're a private equity fund. We have Centroid. So we invited Centroid when Clear Lake invested. We invited Centroid because they own TaylorMade Golf, and we wanted to. They're effectively a silent investor. We wanted to have a TaylorMade relationship, and hopefully you'll see some positive TaylorMade relationship here because of that investment. Freestone Capital, which is kind of one of the original investors that helped Peter at the very beginning. Peter, friends and family, me, Christian. There's quite a bit of different investors.
And who were the investors before them?
Blackstone was one, and Blackstone, a lot of you know, they're one of the largest, they may be the largest investment group in the world. And so that's what I was saying, we've constantly had in and outs of different investors. There's different Freestone groups that have come in and out, but we've always maintained operational independence. We've always, in a leadership team, continued to be a hospitality company.
And before that, Peter Manula was going to sell to Club Corp for $100 million, all 16 clubs.
So that Club Corp approached us, this was a long time ago when we were a lot smaller. Club Corp approached us about buying us. He felt like with investors, he had a fiduciary responsibility to explore that. At the end of the day, he walked away because he realized there's a complete and utter non-cultural fit, and he and whoever the CEO was at the time decided this isn't going to work. It wasn't the deal that was supposed to happen, and since then, it's really come in and said, okay, Concert Golf's going to be a long-term perpetual company. At this point, I think with our size, I would fathom that there's, Concert Golf will be Concert Golf in perpetuity. Is what I.
And so when,
I think that was in 2018 to clarify that.
yes, that was 2018. And in 2012, Peter Danula said that he had $50 million to revamp and recapitalize, and then to sell the clubs or to sell the investments 5 to 7 years on. So in 2018, that would fall into his alignment of wanting to sell those clubs. It was a premeditated act.
It could have, I'm not sure what you're referring to. What I can speak to now is today, where I know kind of what's happened since 2018 and how the company has merged into what it is today and what our goals are today. When Peter started this, he did see an opportunity after the recession, where there were a lot of really healthy clubs in the industry he knew really well. And I'm not even sure when he bought Heathrow and in 2000, Christian, you can clarify this, but when he bought it, I'm not sure he had a plan other than, I know that I want to do private clubs and I know I can help this thing thrive. And now 15 years later, he's still on the club.
And just to, so he sold Arnold Palmer, the one that previously that he ran, was the CEO, right?
And as I mentioned, yes, and I don't actually know a lot of the details about that. So, but Arnold Palmer Golf is sold to Central Coast, right?
Yeah, Peter and Susan were founders of Arnold Palmer Golf Management, right? They established that company and that organization, and as they did so, it grew and thrived. And Peter was the CEO there for 8 years during the 90s, and when they stepped away, it was a privately held company, still is, whatever's left of it in the century, but just like a CEO would start a company, oversee its growth, and then stepped away into something new is what Peter did. So I don't know, sounds like you've done some research and asked some good questions. I don't know that there was ever a sale, a formal sale of Arnold Palmer Golf. But it's a good question. We'll be here for a couple days. It
Yeah.
sounds like you have questions. I'd love to sit.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say too is, it sounds like your concern is the future of reveals what happens if Concert goes away, what happens if they decide to sell this place. And ultimately, I can't stand in front of you and say in 15 or 20 years, I know exactly what's going to happen. Right? There has been the iterations of the things that you brought up. What I know is, like, Christian and I joined this company years ago and plan on having our careers here. And so we need things to go well. I care. Like, I'd love to be the CEO. If Peter ever decides to retire, I'd love to be the CEO one day and make sure that we continue to be the best hospitality company in the industry. Some of those things when we were much smaller that happened are true and real, and ultimately the decision was made every time to continue this perpetual ownership and make sure that these clubs that we care for thrive.
Right, I'm bringing you Mike. I'll try to move around as best I can so that we can hear these questions.
How would management actually work? Because one of my husband and I have been members of the club for about 13 years, and one of the big complaints we have is service. So, and no matter what's done, it's the same. So, with you coming in, what do you do management-wise for service that improve the service of the club? The member experience as far as service from the staff and managers.
Yeah, I think Jordan was clear that we do intend to bring on all the staff. We don't have, I don't know what the full, kit and caboodle is, but 80 people willing to run it. But where we see opportunities, and with 39 clubs that have done very well, we think there may be some. So if we can improve via training, when we implement some of the capital changes like in the kitchen, that's going to be a big help for Chef Matt and his team. He's been specific. In fact, he wrote a nice piece about kind of what he'd like to see organizationally rerouting the kitchen, he needs some additional hoods, he needs some additional stations that'll help him just put out food quicker and more efficiently. So I hope and believe that we can tie into the really wonderful things that he's doing. I think he takes great passion in menus and in fresh ingredients, and what we've learned along the way will continue to. It sounds wonderful, and then we think we've got some really great ideas too, where we've tried them out at other clubs. Not everything's always been a success, but we learn. We can put that one down and pick up some other best practices. So there's not we don't have a cookie cutter formula. We don't have a magic wand to make sure everything's perfect. But we do have a ton of experience, and we're excited to apply that here. So training, staffing, long-term retention. We think there's some real opportunities.
With the two private equity fundings that you did in 2022 with Centroid and Clear Lake, what is the current ownership of Concert Golf right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, investors, ownership, right?
And what's the breakdown of private equity investors versus Concert Golf?
Yeah. So Clear Lake is our majority investor. So you can argue that.
What percentage do they
I
have?
actually don't know the answer.
10%?
No, they're majority, so they're more than 50%. Clear Lake would be more than 50% investor.
And how much direction does Clear Lake give to you?
For
To
me?
run Concert
Yeah,
Golf?
so-
Not to you, to
Yeah,
Concert Golf.
so for benefit there, not much. We really have operational independence. Now, you're right, they have some level of control, and I don't know the exact bylaws, so I understand that, I guess the nuances between bylaws and investment and what the control is. We have board meetings quarterly. Clear Lake has a few positions. There's some, Frank Edwards, who lives here in Charlotte, who's a member of Quail Hollow, is a board member because he knows golf really well. We have a board member that works for Discovery Land, if you know Discovery Land Properties. Paul Major, who works for HSO. So we have a formal board, and all of them are investors, but Clear Lake doesn't have positions on the board. And then, so we have board meetings. We have a monthly check-in call. But really, from a day-to-day basis, part of the reason they're investors is they're trusted and managed. So, like for me, I go to our board meetings. I have very little day-to-day interaction at all with our investors. I know them well, but from a day-to-day perspective, you're looking at the operating.
Yeah, I'll piggyback there. We recently, somebody sent something forward at Centroid Invest brought us in 2022. Centroid, for example, does not have a board position. Silent investor.
And where is Centroid? Where they
They're
located?
Seoul-based, South Korea. Yeah, they're heavy investors in TaylorMade, own TaylorMade, and so that's, like Jordan mentioned, we have a nice relationship, golf industry, and we invited their investment.
Can we shift gears a little bit? Can we talk about membership? What's your philosophy on membership categories and caps on membership?
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm not perfect at handing out microphones, but I'm trying. Would you repeat the question?
The other one, yeah, question.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Just curious about your philosophy on membership categories and what you allow, what you don't allow. What do you think about caps on memberships?
Sure. Yeah, we like fewer categories rather than more. A lot of this industry got into all kinds of membership categories in 2010, 2012, 2014. It was kind of anything that folks could do to attract memberships. We've condensed almost all of our clubs, those categories. Caps, we've reviewed the caps at River Hills. Seems like there's a long way to go before there'd ever be any issues. We've talked specifically about social, and Jordan mentioned earlier. With our investment, we do believe that there's going to be incredible spaces created, and we would like to attract more social members. We hope that a lot of them come from right within the community, but we don't see any issue with the caps. We're going to agree to your cap structure, your membership structure, and if we can really add members that the club benefits from, that would be wonderful. Now, part of our really core belief is allowing the pro shop, the director of golf, to talk to us about memberships. Meaning that we talked about Golf Club of the Everglades in Naples. It's not a 55 plus community, but effectively it's mostly retired folks. We have a very small membership, and they play 5 or 6 days a week, all of them. So while there's no tee times, it would be hard to have even a number like River Hills has today.
At that course, we're on a wait list with 300 golf members, and we're on a wait list after, one has to leave in order for another one to come. At that club, they play a lot of golf there.
Yep. And we're on a wait list at about a third of our club, so when our pro shop says, hey, the guy we talked about, Omega and Circle of Friends, they're not able to get their 8:32 a.m. tee time that they've always had, well, that's a problem, right? So we've got to cut it off. So we think that the tee sheet really kind of dictates the membership. We've got clubs in, I mentioned Boston, granted it's a 27-hole facility, but we have a huge membership because that membership works and lives right by the golf course. The average member probably plays 1.5 times a week. Very different from Golf Club of the Everglades.
With the member categories we have now, the social, sports, and golf memberships, and then not so sports membership. We currently, the sport, as the sports members get, a certain number of holes per month to play. And I know at McGregor, the sports members there only get 6 rounds a year at full visitor rates. If you keep the number of classifications the same at 3, are you going to cut back the number of holes or basically what's available in those categories?
Dan has made it very clear that sports and social members need to continue to have access to the golf course. So it's something that we will work on and make sure we get right. The board in general has also made it very clear that, hey, these are some of the cultural practices that are really important at the club, and if they were to go away, then we just can't support a recapitalization through Johnson Golf Partners. So I say all that to say that we'll work on making sure that sports memberships that get 72 holes per month, is that right? We'll have 72 holes per month.
And on bylaws and so forth, do you just change new bylaws once you acquire the club, so the existing bylaws are no longer in effect?
We adopt yours. Both sides, you guys will have an attorney that represents River Hills interests, we'll have an attorney that navigates the transaction. We'll work together. I think anything that we've sort of worked on as far as the recapitalization goes, they'll adjust, tweak language to make sense that all of this is included. Right, so there are adjustments because there's fundamental changes occurring, but we adopt your bylaws.
Legally, what happens, just to be clear, legally what will happen is the bylaws existing with River Hills Country Club go away because the assets were transferred to a new LLC. You'll sign new bylaws. Our goal will be to align those bylaws as closely as we can to what's existing today, including what you just mentioned, which is the caps, the categories and how they're used. Those will remain the same, but things will change in there, like the voting procedures, some of the equity club agreements. So you'll effectively sign a new bylaws with the new club that will align with what we present.
So in that case, like the caps on membership and the caps on the members that are out there, will you certify those every year that you're in compliance with them?
Well, so some of it, like you mentioned, and we've talked to Dan about this a lot, is that we think the caps are very reasonable today. We have no intention of changing them right now. In 15 or 20 years, the director of golf may need to make a decision, or we build and we can up the social cap. So we will have some flexibility to change those in the future for the health of the club. But we're committing right now to make sure that you have your caps in your documents. And we haven't gotten to the nuance of what that looks like on a timeline or how they could be changed in the future yet, so we're working on that with the board, but we understand the importance of caps, which is why we mentioned, we've got caps at different clubs, we've got wait lists at different clubs. And I don't think we know enough about, is it 390 members, is it 410 members? I don't think we know enough of that.
It may have more to do with it, because it's a good question. You just wanna make sure you have access to the golf course, because it's, crowded at tea time. It may have more to do with total number of rounds annually, right? A lot of clubs can kind of say, hey, this is how many rounds we've had. We referenced, a couple clubs where it's at extremes on one end or the other. But that sweet spot, 30,000 rounds would be a lot. Well, we have clubs with 475 full golf members that only get 19,000, and there's room. So the director of golf and the pro shop to us is important in that question. And that's your team, right? That's the River Hills staff that would be telling us, hey, we've kept all the groups together, they're playing, everything's good, we added a few members, but now we're being told that you can't get times on Tuesdays anymore. So we've got to monitor it pretty closely.
Well, they'll be your employees and no longer ours at that point.
In place today and will continue. Yeah.
I could possibly run two-part question. So you had mentioned part of your business plan, I guess, if you will, in the beginning, is you reached out to us. So two-part question. How many clubs do you guys reach out to a year?
And how many of them say no to compare to yes? And then going back to one slide before this, where you put up, I think, 17, I counted clubs, and you had the percentage of vote, right? 100%, 93%, all that good stuff. What about the other 25 or so clubs? What were their votes like?
If you guys threw tomatoes at us today, we wouldn't go to a membership vote. Right. What was the first part?
So the first part is the business model you mentioned, when you
Reaching out.
You reached out, how many of those clubs do you do that for?
Yeah, I could probably name 200 clubs that I have a personal relationship with where I talk to once a month. They're friends, they're people, if we didn't continue this conversation with River Hills, I would stay in touch with Dan and I would talk to him when he's walking his dog. Because I'm a human being, these become relationships, it's golf. And so I talk to clubs, it's largely my responsibility all over the country regularly. We read news articles, sometimes there's opportunities that present themselves. There's big, if you follow all the feeds like I do in the golf world, hey, there's a $10 million renovation. I'll call and say, hey, talk to Dan or talk to John, a general manager, and say, what's that look like? How's the process going? Do you have options? Have you considered something like us? And try and learn. Because again, the nature of clubs is private. And so unless you call and ask, you just don't know. You have no idea if they're having a perfect time and it's the country club at Brookline.
So let me rephrase. So
Yeah.
what would be, in your estimation, a good close rate, and what is your close rate?
Well, I don't think in close rates, I guess, because probably only a handful of conversations really evolve where there's a great opportunity for both sides. So it might be funny for you guys to think of it this way, but we feel like we're interviewing you as much as you're interviewing us. We do believe River Hills is a great thing. We think that our core culture and yours align nicely, but we do have to do some research in order to find that out. And we're eager to learn a lot about you guys. So, club that I have very dear relationships with just recently, for example, and I'll leave it, remain anonymous. They had a lot of the needs, but an alternative set of facts where we would have loved to have them included in the concert family, and we just couldn't. The investment would have been too big, the amount of debt was insurmountable, that type of thing. So, close rate, I don't know. We talk to clubs, and if it goes down the path and seems like a good idea and you continue to do diligence, we spend a lot of money doing our diligence because we get into environmental tests, et cetera, where we have to bring in third-party groups to make sure to take soil samples and to learn about the water and the HOA and advise us a little bit in some of those areas. So we only kind of go down that road if it's a really healthy opportunity for both sides.
I would say you're actually seeing that success because we typically don't stand here unless we have deep conviction that it's gonna work for both parties. And so our success has been that, but there's oftentimes, like Christian just mentioned, we have a great relationship very recently with the board where we said, we're not gonna do town halls and stuff because they had too much debt and we just couldn't, we knew that if we paid off that debt, it was gonna turn into a relationship that was gonna be contentious before, because they already had some issues at the club. So when you see that success rate, it's because we pick and choose when we can get to this point, and then it goes really well. But there's a lot of clubs where, for one reason or another, it doesn't get to this point where we're doing town halls because it's not a true win-win. So when we're reaching out to clubs, that's what we're looking for.
Non-traditional business, our job.
There's a question.
I guess this is more a question for our board, but if we're entertaining the option of selling the club, it seems that we would have a means of comparison and not solely hone in on this one company that approached us. So that has me quite baffled, and ideally we would have a means of comparison. If you all, it doesn't take much research. There's a lot of adverse information out there about your particular company. So I would just ask that our members here really take this seriously, because once a sale goes through, it's locked in and you really can't, it's a point of no return. So
Yeah, a couple of points there. There aren't a lot of folks that do this, would be one. And we've worked hard. I mean, I think because we reached out to them, they were actually pretty apprehensive themselves. Why are you reaching out to us? What does this mean? And so we've spent a lot of time, meetings, information exchanges, case studies, club visits, and I think that was a really important part of the process. And the feedback that we've received from your board was that both sides believed it was a healthy cultural fit, the types of boxes we could check on behalf of your membership were important to them, and that it maybe wasn't really about a money transaction. I think this is a pretty appetizing proposal that we're putting together. We feel wonderful about it. It'll be a lot of nice improvements, fast-tracked, guarantee of no assessments. I think there's a lot of good and a tremendous benefit to the membership. But it seemed at every turn that the board was really interested in finding, hey, these are the things that we care about, and you're hearing some of it today. Membership caps, commitments to groups, to play, those seem to be their area of focus. And then I'll say last on their behalf, I think they have spoken with or researched some other options. I'll let them answer that themselves.
Yeah, excuse me. First, I can assure you we're taking this very seriously. So any thought that this board is not taking it seriously is mistaken. Where we are in the process, to be clear, I got the initial call, we got the board involved, we had two choices. One was proceed down the path that we knew would result in a large assessment as an option, or consider another option and do the due diligence, which quite frankly has taken an unbelievable number of hours by a volunteer group to get to this point, where it is simply to see, we had no idea if members would even consider this as an option. So where we are is, here is the research that's been done, the due diligence that's been done, where the board feels the notion of selling to a third party is a viable option. I honestly had, and we had no idea what the reaction was going to be, which could be, we have not, as mentioned, engaged an attorney because we didn't want to be spending the club's money if that wasn't a solution that members thought was viable. So there is a discussion with another group that is happening. I made Christian Jordan aware of that because we've been working so closely with them on this, and I think they've invested a lot. So there is no rush. There is no urgency. There's no exclusivity that was ever signed with this group. We needed to take it to the point far enough. And if, for instance, there was pushback on, no, we're not going to listen to the caps and we're going to grow to 500, or there's not a guarantee on dues control, or we're not going to honor lifetime members, that would have stopped. You never would have heard about this. So we'll be sending out soon after, early next week, a survey / ability to provide feedback to get a sense for where members' heads are, and do we take this to the next step, which will include other discussions. There's several, a few other logical candidates that the board has researched and decided wouldn't be a cultural fit. And as I've shared that with many members, got a lot of nodding of heads that from that standpoint. So, just to be clear around where we are, this is not at the stage where, where we're saying, okay, next week you're doing a vote on this. We need to get feedback. The members feel we need to take this to the final step of a final review of other providers, and then engagement with an attorney to make sure we're protected like we believe we'll be protected. Yes, ma'am.
Is there an independent appraisal of the assets and the properties of the golf course and the clubhouse if it's being sold? It would seem to me you have to have an independent appraisal.
Concern. Actually, I'm going to tap Keith, who's our treasurer.
Yeah, so from a valuation standpoint, since it's a specific use property, never can be developed, we wouldn't even entertain this if that was a possibility. You don't go out and get an appraisal like you would any property that could be developed. Okay, so you look to, understanding the value, you look to the cash flow stream. And we did model that. And we modeled it for what it was worth to us, and we modeled it what we thought it would be worth to a third party recapitalizing based on synergies they would bring. And there are two different values. And what's being proposed today is exceeding what the value was in our model, and we think a fair price being offered based on what the value is to Concert.
I'll
That
piggyback
answer the
there a little
question?
bit. A lot of the membership at my home club, I mentioned it earlier, it's a pretty affordable club, happens to have 2 great golf courses that I'm very proud to be a part of. But it's pretty affordable membership, and it's owned by a private family. But I'm losing my train of thought here. Oh, Grace, if you went, and I think they have, because it's a very wealthy private ownership, went and decided to sell the pool to your Toll Brothers, it's a big number. But that means the bulldozers come in, And so probably a lot of people that haven't worked on the board don't know, but River Hills has struggled financially in some years, even very recently. And this has been a pretty wonderful, record-breaking even era for the private club business and industry as a whole. For the last 4 years, there's been a stronger demand and a rising interest in private club membership. I can't quote you statistics, maybe I should be able to, but I would say easily in the 20 to 30% growth range. And yet there's still been very unique and specific challenges financially, and that's tough. So what we learned in working with your board is that they've lost sleep for years navigating strategic financial approaches and solutions. And what they've arrived at is what they think is a way to expedite wonderful upgrades immediately, quickly, for you to enjoy now without assessing any of the membership and stabilizing dues. We agreed to a freeze for 1 full year, and then a limit on future increases. And we believe we can do it. And frankly, it's because of our model. It's because of these great partners and investors we have. It's because of our economies of scale and our buying power. It's something that you simply just don't have access to. If you could snap your fingers and do away with the debt, if you could snap your fingers and fund these projects, it would be a different story. But it's just not the case. And so we feel that we're experienced, we've got experts, and this is the only thing that we do. This is our club business.
I just want to add one thing quickly on the valuation comment. You know, that's all based upon Keith's initial premise of this is a single-use asset. And in order to protect that, we're currently looking at 3 lines of defense. First line is what's mentioned around the deed restriction that would be in the agreement. The second line of defense would be the HOA, who we met with and is in contact with their attorneys around what are the HOA protections around regulations, bylaws that, for whatever reason, if defense number 1 was penetrated, how could that be prevented? And then I wanted to thank Eric Jeffries, who, coming out of the town hall last week, sent out some information I knew nothing about, but it's really a third line of defense from York County. And this notion of establishing the club in a permanent conservation trust, where we can specify exactly what the property can only be used for. That exhausts my knowledge of that from Eric's email, but he got us the name of the person, York County, etc. So, you know, to me, the overarching, there's a ton of risks associated with this sale. The overarching risk that we absolutely need protected on is against alternative use development of our assets that would be sold. Those would be the 3 lines of defense, and if we continue down this path, we want to totally flush out. So, thanks.
Eric, when we got that question, we looked at each other and went, yeah, great. We get to operate a club forever. Not a development, not some alternative use.
With regard to the lifetime memberships and the 10-year, obviously you've already agreed to take them on, and we appreciate that. Would you be able to write into it that in the rare event that you sold in the future, that they would have to respect that just the way our contract is now? Is that?
That is absolutely intent.
Yeah.
The intent. And
There was
again,
a contract that he.
Intent and in writing.
yes, when we get to the sort of engagement with attorney, that needs to be protection, future sales.
But if you file bankruptcy, if it's a chapter 7.
Well, our contract now says if they file bankruptcy, you're screwed, so.
Yeah, there's a lot of what ifs.
That's-
We have no issue honoring it.
But the thing is, if it's resale, as long as it's written in there as an addendum.
It's a good question. Is everybody getting this? For lifetime memberships, yeah, okay, so let me clarify. It's a good question. For lifetime or 10-year members, which are some of the members that have contributed significantly financially to the club, and it's the reason that everything is pretty healthy today. What guarantees do they have if we sold, if we went bankrupt, if something happened with Concert Golf Partners? And the clean answer is that we'll have to figure it out, and we'll have to contractually find a way. There's probably some folks in the room that have more experience with this. There might not be a perfect protection, just like there might not be a perfect protection if River Hills filed bankruptcy independently or went belly up. But our goal would be to protect some of the, financial contributors and long-term caring members of River Hills, just like we want to protect our own investment. We're about to, consider that the only way that putting $7.5 million, and that's kind of on paper. Really, we have deal costs that exceed that. We have a risk of recent years of losses that were pretty significant. This is not what we see as a gamble, but this is a scenario where we're betting on ourselves. We really believe that this is going to go well. We want to be in the boat with the River Hills membership. And we think that our offer is pretty substantial, where it's important that we run the club happily and well with happy members for a long time in order to make sense of that.
I I
Yeah.
came from a club in Birmingham that shut down. And there was a covenant that it was to remain a golf course. So the homeowners were in a 7-year battle. 7 years the course was shut down. So even a covenant, just so everybody knows, they eventually won and bought it over and sold again, and it's recently closed down this year. I guess part of what you have to do, a covenant is only open to a legal battle. I mean, that's basically what it is. So it's just a matter of looking at the people and deciding if you think these are the people that are gonna be good to their commitment, just like we do anybody else across the table.
I think,
And you know, whether it's you all or whatever. One of the comments I'll make is, you said you're in the hospitality business, and I will repeat my question again, okay? What are you gonna do to increase, and I'm not talking about the dining room and how fast, I mean, everything across this board in this club. Garbage cans empty, the facilities cleaned, members greeted, them knowing who we are, that the staff does what they're supposed to do in the hospitality industry. You can put all the beautiful facilities and invest your money, and you said you don't really have a plan of what you do. Do you, Concert Golf, not have standards of service across your golf courses?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I reach for the microphone because it's near and dear to my heart. I ran restaurants in my early career and have an eye for exactly what you're describing. And while I think my answer earlier was that we don't have a cookie cutter approach, I would offer the pride in which we take in our clubs, and I think there's a few. I know Frank's here, Dan's here, Jennifer here, John's here, visited our clubs. Maybe just a hand up is the best way. Did you feel that the service, hospitality, experience, food, did you feel, to answer, what was your name, I'm sorry? Lynn's question, would you raise your hand if you think that it was acceptable?
Top shelf.
Exceptional.
Top shelf, sorry, excuse me.
Exceptional.
Explain the type of service. It's hard to explain the type of service that a country club should be getting if you really don't have a lot of experience in a lot of other country clubs. But when you actually experience other country clubs, it's like, wow, I think we're missing the boat, guys. I mean, every single time I walked in, it was nothing but wonderful. And I'm not talking, they knew who I was. I was just Joe Schmo off the street. It's that kind of service, to your point, that is so integral in a country club. And it's that kind of service that sometimes isn't happening. Right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm not trying to, bash anybody here, okay? Staff or employees. But to your point, with more what?
Not here.
Right, with more capital resources, with more staffing, there's so many people that wanna live in the Carolinas, and there's a lot of people that are staffed here that might wanna move elsewhere. So there's a lot of opportunity if we have the proper funding for the proper staff, the proper position, all of that. It's more than just capital investment. I really wanna make that clear. It's more than just capital investment. It's also capital investment in the people and the processes and the service quality, the member experience.
let me say one more thing. I highlighted this. That's Aaron Straub right there. He's one of our leaders. So we do training. So we come in and make sure the team has expectations. Aaron's claim to fame is that he spent years in Europe getting yelled at by Gordon Ramsay. He worked front of house for Gordon Ramsay, one of his first restaurants years and years ago, and got absolutely killed every day. You've seen his TV shows. And so Aaron prides himself in understanding what is the attention to detail that is needed in order to give great hospitality service. So yeah, we come in, we have food and beverage, kind of regional people, we help across clubs to make sure that the standards are what we expect them to be. So there will be training, effectively, to answer your question more specifically. We have leadership to make sure that those standards are there.
Dan mentioned to me also, this is just kind of a neat story from my perspective, but might give you a little insight. We purchased a golf club in the greater Philadelphia area it was a small ownership group, but predominantly two brothers, and they had been in restaurants. They've been very successful with several franchises that they owned and operated. So they saw the private club that they owned and operated through the lens of a restaurateur. And so his attention to detail on service and on food was exceptional. And when we met them, we loved the club. We thought it was beautiful. We loved the business. We liked everything about it. And today, they're part of the Concert family. But we knew, because he was kind of a visionary, he was very entrepreneurial, and he had really outstanding service levels and expectations. We thought, boy, we have kind of a way of doing some of these things ourselves. We hope this goes really well, because these are big shoes to fill. He set the table. And so when we got into the business transaction with them and learned more about the club, at some point Jordan and I looked at each other and we said, gosh, his name's Steve. It would be great if Steve worked for Concert Golf. But God, how are we going to convince an owner that's selling to us to now come work for us? Well, he does. He stayed on. We convinced him and incentivized him to stay on and travel around, because we thought his service levels exceeded even our own. And it's unique. You just meet some people that are pretty talented and good at their jobs. And every time we all go out and grab a burger and a beer, or, have a salad somewhere, every once in a while they really knock your socks off, and it's impressive. If you have a bad meal, you won't go back, and you might even mention it to a couple of people, but most of us don't talk about the excellent service levels. If you just, everything went perfect, you walk out, you're just satisfied, you go back, that's how you do it. But most people don't hop online and write reviews. They don't call their buddy and go, hey, I was at Applebee's and everything was amazing. And so it's a little more difficult to quantify, but we took advantage of this gentleman, Steve, and his incredible passion for service, and he works for us, and he's toured around now to quite a few of our clubs, and he branded a little bit of a phrase where he says, we hire smiles, I hire smiles. He wants a warm, inviting personality at the door. He wants somebody that is serviceable and hospitable, and he feels like he can teach the rest, which side to serve the plate from, how the linens should be folded, and set that level of expectation. But first, it's got to be a warm personality. So it's something that we embody and aspire to. And again, we're not perfect, but I'm pleased that your board was able to travel and go to some of our clubs and experience that firsthand.
Multi-question here. At a private company, you shared any books with the board, or would that be provided before any kind of a deal was made? Do you operate as a REIT, private equity investment trust at all? And would being a private company, possibilities of being sold out to another bigger organization like a BlackRock, Blackstone, or something like that?
Blackstone was a partner investor of ours for a period, probably 5 years or so-ish. Good partner. They've come and gone. Jordan mentioned this earlier, reference that I think we're at a critical mass now where it wouldn't make much sense. We're independently successful. We just don't need it. And frankly, we can invite, like we did Centroid, where we see an opportunity, but we're not in need. We actually have the opposite. We receive offers for investments that we turn away pretty frequently because it might not be the right fit, or we're just not in a position where we need it. So go from startup to well-established. We feel like we're in a pretty good place.
In regards to REIT, we're not a real estate investment trust, so we're not a REIT. And then I think your other question was about showing our books. We spent some time with Keith to get him comfortable. We are a private company and don't share private company information. We did spend time with Keith getting him comfortable. Wait a minute, I've got to be able to tell membership you guys have the capital to do this. And I think we got Keith comfortable, and you can talk to Keith more about that. But obviously, yeah, we're not going to share our private information to every member or anything like that. But we think we got Keith comfortable there. He asked some of those questions as well.
In longevity, you're going to be the next CEO.
Well,
I have my one. Yeah, we're invested in the company ourselves. We joke that it's very small because it is, but we believe the future of the company. And so these relationships and these clubs, they're, I joked about them being our children, but we've developed relationships and we've got history there now. And I'm 42 years old, and I think if I see retirement, I want it to be from
what a dream we have to get to show up and get off of an airplane and go to a beautiful country club and hang out. We have to pitch ourselves. So yeah, we want to be here.
I just have a question in regards to compensation.
pretty subjective, right? You've got Lake Wylie is beautiful, so you can attract talent to come from out of the area. You don't have to hire local, I guess. We looked at a lot of different clubs, kind of books. It's all over the place. So for instance, I'm just going to use the general manager position. It's easy, it's obvious. We see general managers that make, and I'm going to be a little specific but anonymous here, $90,000 a year. We see general managers that make $800,000 a year. The range is wild. So I think I'll explain the high end, that 5% or 10% or whatever it is. Clubs that are 1878 equity clubs with assessments of $30,000 a year by incredibly affluent memberships.
Or 60,000 dues a year.
They do a few things that don't make sense financially, and so their club loses a lot of money. But they almost want to boast that they have the biggest maintenance budget on the golf course, that they pay their general manager some astronomical figure. So once you get outside of that, it becomes a little bit more pragmatic. And when we looked through everything, we thought it was responsible, because at the end of the day, you want exceptional service, but you are running a business. And so when you hire somebody, if I hired Dan to come and work for me, I think he's really talented and I want to attract him, but I also want to get him at an affordable rate, right? You want to be responsible in your pay rates, and you want to make sure that you can retain. It's not just your immediate compensation, can you attract, but can you retain? And is he going to be happy in 2 years, 4 years, 6 years? And so you have to kind of bump. Jordan mentioned it earlier, but one of our benefits, I think, is that we see some of our GMs, once their kids move out of the house, they start looking at our Florida portfolio, and they go, oh, that's a really lovely club in Fort Myers. When's that general manager retiring? And so we do have a little bit of that stickiness where inside the organization you can grow. Joseph Noel was one reference that Jordan made. He's an important part of our team. He'll work very closely with the staff here through transition if we get to that point. But he's only one of numerous examples of folks that have risen through our organization. So to answer your question, we thought it was very much in line for the size of the club, the style of the club. I think absolutely you can attract good talent at the rates that you've offered.
If I could just add one other point, because as part of the due diligence we've been doing, one of the questions was very similar to that. I asked to get from Concert salary ranges by positions, with the thought being, if obviously the intent is to retain, but if there's an opening, wanted to be sure that the salary that would be offered for the replacement would be in line with, at a minimum, with what we had historically paid. And obviously a lot of concern on confidentiality within their company around that, because club by club that could differ, but was shared with me. And similar to Keith's sort of viewing of the sort of capital on hand, it was very comforting to see the salary ranges for the jobs in line with historical River Hills. So, not a situation where clearly, you get what you pay for, and you're going to pay a lot less when positions are open. So, just wanted to add that.
It's just a data point from the internet, so take it for what it's worth. Kind of in line with your point over here. We too done our research online, and you find people online just complain about everything. It seems a little bit of good stuff, but if you, my wife was looking at Glassdoor.com, which is a website where employees post about their wages and their experience at the company and so on, and it's on a scale of 1 to 5. We just found it interesting that when we looked at Concert Golf, they were ranked a 3.8. When we looked at River Hills Country Club, it was a 3.1. So much lower than what Concert Golf is online. And a lot of the similar complaints, again, a few people put good things on the internet, a lot of people put, rah, 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 about this and that, so.
I just got a kind of quick question, I guess. So looking forward, you guys, Concert Golf obviously has a profit motivation, as you should, right? That's the right thing to do.
How do you see that kind of manifesting itself here at River Hills, for example? To kind of improve your returns on your investment, things like expanding the membership, bringing more members in, growing the membership base a little bit faster, perhaps, leasing out kind of some of the space for community events and things like that. What are the opportunities that you see? What are the biggest opportunities that you see to kind of help you grow that?
Yeah, great question. And we didn't talk about events, and that's probably a really important one. So we think that events can be a wonderful way to subsidize the other business. The first time we talked about it, Dan, I think, asked this exact question. And I said, boy, I don't know your clubhouse intimately, but I'd be curious where we would put a massive wedding. And I can't see selling one on a Friday and Saturday every weekend. It seems unrealistic to me. We've not built from the ground up a single club. If we did, I'd actually be curious to see what it looked like. We've inherited cultures, we've inherited clubhouses and amenities, and we've tied into the existing practices, the tournaments, the programming, the wine and bourbon dinners, and we've tried to, broaden and expand. We think that member engagement is so critical. How do we get the members out here? Something that stuck out to me, one of my early questions, I said, it's a Tuesday. Do you just run up to the club and eat a sandwich? There's no event. You're not there playing golf. You just go out there. And the answer from the board was mostly not really. It's an option, but not really. It's just not utilized that way. So that to me was an immediate hit. Let's fix some of what Lynn's discussing. Let's elevate service standards. Let's get the food. A lot of the feedback we've gotten is that the food's tasty, but it's not fast all the time. Let's improve some of those areas. Let's just tighten up. We heard from Don Smith at Longview when he came on board, and it's only been 6 months or something. He said, hey, the overwhelming majority of members of Longview are really happy, but there were some little things. So he had it working on place settings, just the appearance of the table when you walk into the formal dining room, anyways, things like that. So we think that there are a lot of those areas that are elbow grease, training, experience. We really hope to capitalize there. We do want to do some events, and we've gotten into the nitty-gritty of what that looks like. The HOA had concerns. Access through the gate, road maintenance, things like that. So thankfully, we've got a history of relationships with HOAs that have been very successful. You guys happen to be close to one at Longview, where there's been some headaches, and I apologize. It must be a little bothersome to go through this kind of conversation with that nearby, but I can tell you, Longview, for the most part, is a really happy place, and we're very proud of our relationships with HOAs. They've done very well. So to more directly answer your question, we do intend to and hope to do some events. They're great ways to make sure we can keep membership dues down. It subsidizes the business a little bit, but I don't think that that'll be a really core part of our business here at River Hills. I just don't think that the location geographically and the clubhouse, the way that it's set up today, really lend itself to that.
If I can add on, we talked about on the visits and the conversations and the other clubs, what we learned, and why that was super positive. To specifically answer the question on what our learnings and observations, I think 3 things will be different. Not necessarily negative, but different. And eyes wide open, we need to understand. Number 1 is, I think there will definitely be an increase in Monday golf events. We've seen some of the clubs we visited, more than half the Mondays have a Monday golf event. I'm not sure that could be achieved here. If we could do more than we do now, we've been pursuing that for a while because that reduces pressure on member dues. We will see more Monday golf events. We're still in the, if we decide to proceed, we have to finalize sort of can there be caps on numbers, those sorts of things. Number 2 is there will be member growth. We have 750 members. We're going to honor the caps. It's a long way to go to the caps. I think there could be more success in growing members when the amenities are put in and the place, would be more appealing. I think we will have more members. I was encouraged when we heard more than a third of the clubs have a waiting list, which implies, to Christian and Jordan's point, we watch that closely, Browns played, etc. But there will be more members. And then third, eventually, there will be more events. We don't have the space right now. If the vision that was talked about was built, we saw it in McGregor Downs, I think 3 potential places that could seat 200 people on site. The great news is that doesn't impact members because it's the capacity there. So more Monday events, more members, more non-member events eventually are the things I think that we need to realize would be coming. If managed the right way, it's not necessarily a negative. Many of those things we would have done on our own and would try to do and haven't been successful to relieve pressure on dues. But those are the 3 that pop to mind with that question.
You will not be a non-profit, but it can't, member organization, you're a for-profit entity. So that means that non-members will be able to come here where now they're restricted. So because you said you're an LLC, you're not a 501c7.
Still private.
Yeah, that's not entirely true then, because we still have, we own and operate solely private club. So a Monday outing, member sponsored or not, would be non-members using the club when the members are not. And the thing that we always watch on, because Jordan and I are both golfers, is what does the course look like? If the course suffers as a result of Mondays where the agronomy team doesn't have an opportunity to get out there and do what they need to do, well then that's a problem. If the course is in great shape and you can do those things to supplement, we feel like that's a win. So we'll watch that closely, and we'll have to work with Aaron, and he'll tell us, hey, the greens need a day. They just need a day. So we'll have to make sure that the course is in good shape. And I would say again, to those that were able to go to visit our courses, we're able to do those things pretty successfully today. We've managed the 2 where, yes, there are Monday outings, and yes, the course is still in good shape, and that would be our hope and responsibility. We are just past 2, and you've obviously seen some folks filing out of the room. Does anybody have one kind of final question or consideration? And remember, we are here for 2 days, and there will be 2 more sessions today. So I hope this was informative. I hope we didn't bore you completely to tears. I hope this was productive. And we're really grateful for everybody that spent time listening to us and interacting with us today. And we'd encourage you to stop in and see us.
Thanks for
Wait, he's coming.